On March 17, 2005, a hiker walking the Lone Mountain Trail in Carson City noticed a shoe sticking out of the ground and alerted authorities, who found the buried body of a woman wrapped in a sleeping bag. Authorities estimated that the woman had passed away about a year before she was discovered. Investigators followed the usual procedure to identify the woman, but were unable to, and she became a Jane Doe. Of the Carson City Sheriff's Office brought the case to the DNA Do Project in 2019 to attempt to investigate genetic genealogy, to trace Jane Doe's identity using DNA matches to build her family tree after a complex series of laboratory processes to extract DNA and translate it into a workable profile for a comparison to the millions of records in the databases. Volunteer investigative genetic genealogists get to work in May 2020. The DNA Do Project said that since research began, more than 13 volunteers have worked to connect the matches with family trees going back to ancestors born in the mid-1700s in England. It took a little less than a year to narrow the in a search of a single family. In the vast tree, 3 of the 6 siblings were women, and this lead was offered to the investigating officers to follow up. In October 2022, a family member's ancestry DNA test was uploaded to gedmatch.com, a public database that can be used in law enforcement cases. After this DNA match, investigators confirmed that Jane Doe is Joyce Rogers Annis, originally from Michigan. In addition to providing the critical lead to this identification, the DNA Do Project team also provided information about a man associated with Joyce who later confessed to burying her body on Lone Mountain. It turned out that 72-year-old Joyce passed away due to natural causes, and her husband Edward Barton buried her in the mountains. They were homeless and had no money for a funeral. Unfortunately, there is no way to prove or disprove Edward Barton's version of events, and the case is currently considered solved. Catherine Spacito attended high school in Brooklyn, New York during the 80s, before moving to Prescott, Arizona, to enroll at Prescott College as an art major and avid hiker. On June 12, 1987, she moved into her new residence, where she quickly made many new friends. Kathy informed her friends during dinner on June 12 of her plans to go hiking early the following morning, June 13 at 7:00 a.m. Kathy rode her mountain bike directly to the trailhead and started uphill from there. Trail is located within Prescott National Forest, approximately 10 minutes from downtown Prescott, and has long been popular with hikers in the area. Soon after Kathy left, other hikers heard someone calling out for assistance. Unfortunately, due to dense terrain, it took some time before anyone located her, by which point she had died. At first, it appeared as though this grisly scene could only belong to police Kathy, who were hiking through Yavapai County, when their thumb trail became insecure, and Kathy died as a result of blunt force injury to her left side, caused by 2 rocks and ratchet wrench discovered at the crime scene. Subsequent investigation determined her cause of death to be blunt force injury from 2 rocks striking together, as well as being struck in her eye using .22 caliber instrument that failed to enter her brain and struck an instrument with .22 caliber bullet that hit her eye with .22 caliber instrument, after which an instrument hit her eye using .22 caliber instrument, struck through her eye using .22 caliber instrument, which hit her face using .22 caliber instrument, which never managed to enter her brain before going on attack again and making cut marks visible at back of her head area. Therefore, police began their investigations on scene. Searching for perpetrators proved extremely challenging due to a lack of witnesses in certain cases, proving extremely challenging in terms of investigations. Over time, investigators determined there may have been multiple perpetrators. Yavapai County Sheriff David Rad advised everyone involved to keep all doors open. My team may be closer than ever before to discovering answers. If the case is solved, chances are DNA played a significant role. With recent developments of DNA tests such as family tree DNA tests available today, new breakthroughs could potentially solve it all. Yavapai's silent witness provided the reward, offering anonymous tips in order to solve cases more effectively. Sal Bazito flew in from New York to visit the crime scene, along with detectives. Sal asked anyone with information to contact him immediately. one classmate from high school sent an email out. "I hope you'll forgive my posting this grim information here, but I'm sharing it in hopes that prayer and closure for one of our own may find peace now. Kathy Spacito was brutally murdered in 1987. The case remains open." Kathy had recently visited Prescott with her partner when it happened, and they visited some downtown stores together. On one visit, they saw an enormous window display featuring Kathy's picture. Despite this fact that police continue searching for those responsible, Kathy and her partner spoke with the store owner, who offered new possibilities that may help their search efforts. Recently, new evidence has surfaced which has renewed hope of solving this mystery. An alumni also noticed posters with similar slogans in local stores across the city. She was delighted to discover that memory of Kathy and her pursuit of justice were not lost to time. "I thought you might find this information interesting, and please remember her spirit along with this investigation during 2021. Sheriff Rad commented on how 34 years can seem like an eternity. Yet our department, as well as cold case investigators, still recall each investigation by name. What happened to Kathy? Our legal team is currently investigating. We have information regarding what transpired to Kathy, so we hope they take the necessary steps and speak up. Especially since Kathy's brother advised her in an interview conducted in 2021 that one should never give up hope of having an optimistic future. He vividly remembered the day when he received such a shocking and painful news. It was shocking and unbearable. Something no one should experience. Unfortunately, this wasn't an accident either. Someone with extreme anger was looking to end her existence as soon as possible. Sal Bazito revealed their father died suddenly without explanation in 2010, and their mother passed away a couple of years later, leading him to speculate that it could have been due to heartbreak over events happening with Kathy. Sal concluded the interview stating he believes his mother passed due to broken hearts due to what had transpired with Kathy. Kathy Spacco died a horrid death on August 25, 2023, and Sheriff David Rhodes revealed at a press gathering that DNA evidence indicated Brian Scott Bennett as the suspect in her case. Sheriff Rhodes stated to reporters, "I can state today with absolute certainty that Brian Scott Bennett killed Kathy Spacco. She was one of his serial predators." Bennett would have turned 53 by the time of his death in 1994, having just recently relocated from Calvin, Kentucky to Prescott for only 16 months before leaving Prescott High School in 1988 and entering temporary service with the Army before eventually leaving that branch and joining in 1989 when it reformed itself temporarily again. Bennett was eventually charged with forgery in 1991 and sentenced to 3 years of probation by Prescott Sheriff's Office, despite never having been found guilty of violent offenses. Additionally, he was imprisoned at Arizona Prison due to document forgery charges as well as wanted status during 1993. Investigators believe Kathy was Bennett's initial victim. Additionally, investigators believe he was also responsible for an assault against another female victim aged 30 at approximately the same location on April 13, 1990. Her boyfriend was camping alongside her when Bennett came from behind and threatened her by throwing a boulder over her head, then attacked before fleeing back into the woods. Sheriff R.H. subsequently provided details at a press conference regarding an additional incident along the same trail, wherein DNA tests from this incident led investigators to a relative of Bennett. In 2017, using advanced DNA technology, investigators were able to connect DNA evidence found from the second incident with Kathy's story as told by Sheriff R.H.'s. Their DNA samples were sent off for testing at laboratories where female descendant Bennett could be found. After performing a tree analysis of family members, authorities traveled to Kentucky and then Bennett in order to ascertain if there was indeed someone related. Bennett's body was then cremated so they could obtain her complete DNA profile for analysis purposes. Investigators confirmed that both attacks along the hiking trail had the same DNA profile. Family forensics analysis continued. DNA was extracted through cheek swabs taken from Bennett's brother and sister of Bennett. Investigators were not able to locate the DNA from a wrench that ended Kathy's life until March 2023, according to Bennett's testimony, when they identified its DNA on a wrench used in killing Kathy. Bennett stated that a male suspect assaulted 2 female attendees of an event held in Chino Valley during July 1990 before assaulting one more who lay drinking before collapsing in bed for the night. Bennett followed Renee Sandel into her room, attempted to attack her, and attempted to open fire before witnesses were able to break down the door and force Bennett out before fleeing again. Later detained by Chino Valley Police Department, but cleared due to conflicting witness testimony. Sheriff Rode identified Renee Sandel as Bennett's 4th victim from that incident on June 6, 1993, as she left her post. Prescott Bennett Police Office at Prescott Bennett forced Renee Sandel into her vehicle at knife point and assaulted her repeatedly before stopping it because the headlights weren't dimming properly, prompting Renee Sandel to flee, with RAD reporting that Renee believed her life may be threatened by this individual. Renee Sandel was 22 when she was kidnapped and assaulted. At Friday's press conference, she spoke of what happened during that ordeal as part of Renee Bennett's testimony. Unfortunately, he was released again, based on differing stories and insufficient evidence. Renee Sandel spoke at this press conference, as Renee Bennett wasn't charged due to inconsistencies between their accounts, as well as lack of evidence against him. When she said that it took an extended wait, my response was immediate. Thank God. I gave him all praise and glory because he was with me during prayer time that evening. His Lordship spoke directly with me as well, and is ultimately responsible for why I'm here today. Today, she is at peace. Kathy. You are liberated. There are too many feelings I cannot describe to you in words alone. It is impossible for me to enumerate them all. Devil believes it's essential for young people, both younger and older alike, to keep an eye on themselves as well as be conscious of those in their surroundings. Be alert for anything suspicious. My grandchildren often hear me remind them about this fact as well, since Mom's cold case detectives were able to link 4 distinct victim cases involving Kathy Renee Sandel and 2 others through DNA analysis, even though Bennett is not being prosecuted in these matters. RAD pointed out at a briefing for the press how such an act could occur in such a lovely location, raising doubts as to their significance and gravity. Authorities were inquisitive as to whether there might be additional victims beyond Kathy and 3 women linked with suspect. Investigators believe there may be multiple victims. The suspect continued to stress the serious nature of violent crimes. These predators noted it's highly likely, considering how frequently their actions occurred, that there aren't 4 instances existing of him being involved with these actions. Sheriff RH has noted that we accomplished our second purpose with this case by giving voice and answers back to survivors, as well as providing information back into the community. Volunteer detectives and their many colleagues spent much time and energy solving 4 cases today, providing relief, closure, or perhaps even validation to 4 women involved in those cases. Prescott Mayor Phil Good, who attended the press conference, expressed that recent advancements in DNA technology provide closure for those involved with cold cases, like Kathy Spacito. There is now more information than ever available that may help bring justice into people's homes. 16-year-old Kimberly Liesel lived in Livingston County, Michigan in 1982. She loved poetry and spending time with her sisters. On March 20, 1982, Kimberly left her boyfriend's home and called her mom from a gas station payphone to tell her she was on her way home. She decided to hitchhike, something she had done before. She started in the area of 8 Mile and Inner Roads, and she got a ride to the area of 8 Mile and Merriman Roads in Livonia. At around 6:30 p.m., she made at least 4 phone calls trying to find a ride the rest of the way home. Sadly, Kimberly never made it back home, and she was not seen alive again. Her family searched for her, tracked down her friends, but could not find any trace of her. She was reported missing to the Green Oak Township Police Department the next day. Kimberly Liesel's mother said police kept asking her about her daughter being a runaway, but she was not a runaway. She was on her way home. Joanna Liesel said the days turned into weeks, and then her body was found on April 14, 1982. Kimberly Liesel's body was found behind a park and ride in the Island Lake Recreation Area near Grand River Avenue and Kensington Road, just 5 miles from her home. She had been assaulted, beaten, and strangled, and her personal belongings were not located. An autopsy revealed that even though she had been missing for more than 3 weeks, she lost her life 4 or 5 days before being found. Investigators with the Green Oak Township Police Department exhausted all leads before the case went cold. Kimberly's sister, Cindy Authors, dedicated herself to helping track down the perpetrator. About 15 years ago, I had just started Googling her name to see if I could find anything on her, and I found 2 really old articles that did not have the right information. Cindy Author said, "That kind of upset me that I could not find any information on it. It was like she just did not exist, so that was where I started because I wanted to correct the wrong information, and then it just went from there." Cindy Author started a Facebook page to share information about the case, posted flyers, and tracked down her sister's friends. She became a pseudo-detective. Kimberly's case got a new set of eyes recently when Michigan State University students, taking part in a cold case internship with Michigan State Police, took interest. The students sifted through boxes of evidence and files, and there was a name that caught their eye: Charles David Shaw. Back in 1983, someone had tipped police that Shaw had lived in the area where Kimberly Lysel lived, and they said he had recently destroyed his apartment, which they thought was suspicious. Police took note but never tracked Shaw down. That was interesting because in early 2023, Livingston County cold case investigators announced Shaw as the suspect in the 1983 slaying of 19-year-old Christina Caston. Christina lived with her mother and father in Redford Township at the time of her disappearance. She was last seen between 7:30 p.m. and 9:30 p.m. on March 19, 1983, walking westbound on 5 Mile Road near Lola Park in Redford Township. Her mother reported her missing on March 21, 1983, and her body was found on March 29, 1983, in the Oak Grove State Game Area on Forest Road in Deerfield Township. Police were able to obtain DNA from Christina's body in March 2022. Investigators applied and received grant funding through Season of Justice, a non-profit organization dedicated to funding DNA testing on unsolved cold cases. In May 2022, the DNA evidence was sent to AAM Lab in Texas, the company behind DNA Solves. AAM used the genealogical profile to identify leads in the case and turned that evidence over to investigators. Investigators said through that work and cooperation from the suspect's family, they were able to identify beyond a reasonable doubt who the perpetrator was. The cooperation of the Shaw family during the investigation was paramount to identifying Charles Shaw as the person responsible for what had happened to Christina Caston. Livingston County investigators said in a press release that investigators then began focusing on Shaw as a suspect in Kimberly Liesel's case. They created maps of areas where he was known to spend time, like where he lived and where he worked, and they discovered that those locations surrounded Kimberly's location. Investigators did a property audit on all the property and all the evidence that they had in the case. The students and detectives took that evidence to the Michigan State Police Crime Lab and asked for it to be retested. They were hoping for a miracle, and then, 4 months later, they got a hit. DNA was found on one of the items that had been collected from the crime scene. The DNA had been among the evidence for 40 years and had gone unnoticed. The cell was uploaded into the system and linked to Shaw. The announcement came in September 2023, and investigators believe Shaw kidnapped Kimberly while she was walking. Police said they are 100% confident that Charles David Shaw is responsible for taking the life of Kimberly Liesel. Shaw's body was found in Detroit on November 27, 1983, and the medical examiner's report listed the cause as accidental asphyxiation. Unfortunately, there will never really be justice. Shaw had several interactions with law enforcement beginning at a young age. One such interaction resulted in his arrest in 1981 for the attempted abduction of a woman in the Phil McDonald's parking lot. Detectives are exploring the possibility that Shaw is responsible for additional crimes during the early 1970s, until his end in November 1983.